Get out. We don't serve women like you here. This isn't a charity cafeteria. I said, go away!
Crack. The manager's open hand slammed across the black woman's cheek. Fifth Avenue marble. A turquoise silk scarf slipped from her fingers. She was 42. A CEO. He had no idea. She slowly turned her face back. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper.
Sir, please don't touch me again.
He looked down at her with contempt, leaned closer, spat.
Black women like you don't belong in my store, darling.
She smiled. And that smile? That was the last peaceful moment of his entire career. Let me take you back. 3 hours before that slap. Saturday morning. Harlem. A brownstone on a quiet block where church bells still ring at 8. Grace Underwood woke up the same way she did every Saturday. No alarm, no staff, no driver. Just the smell of coffee and sunlight creeping through linen curtains her mother picked out 15 years ago. She was 42, black, born in public housing in Detroit, raised by a woman named Odessa who worked 3 jobs and never once complained. Odessa passed 4 years ago. Cancer, quick and cruel. But Grace kept the brownstone exactly how her mother left it. Same curtains, same kitchen table, same cracked sugar bowl by the stove, same framed photograph on the mantel. In that photograph, Odessa stood beaming in a navy blue dress, holding a turquoise gift box with gold letters, Ashford and Vale. Inside had been a silk scarf, turquoise. Odessa saved for an entire year, tips from 3 jobs, coins from the laundromat jar, birthday money she never spent on herself, to buy her daughter one single scarf from that Fifth Avenue store for her Harvard Law graduation. Grace remembered the day she opened that box. Her mother's hands were shaking, not from nerves, from pride. The kind of pride that costs a year of sacrifice and still feels like it isn't enough. 1 scarf, 1 year. That was the kind of love Odessa gave. Grace stood in front of that photograph now, coffee in hand. She whispered to it. Acquisition closes Monday, Mama. We did it. Here's the part you don't know yet. Grace wasn't just some businesswoman. She was chairwoman and CEO of Pinnacle Holdings Group, one of the largest private equity firms on the East Coast. 11 days ago, her firm completed a hostile takeover of Ashford and Vale's parent company. The deal? $1.5 billion. The announcement? Monday morning, 48 hours away. In 2 days, Grace would officially own every store, every badge, and every square inch of marble in the Ashford and Vale chain, including the Fifth Avenue flagship. But before she walked into that boardroom as the new owner, she wanted to see the store one last time. Not as the CEO, not with cameras and handshakes. She wanted to walk through those doors the same way her mother did in 1984. As an ordinary black woman with ordinary money, and see exactly how they treated her. Her phone buzzed. Henry Wilson, her COO, her right hand for 12 years. Grace, press team needs your Monday approval. Also, you're not going to that store alone, are you? I just want to walk the floor, Henry, before they put on a show for me. He sighed. He knew that tone. There was no arguing with it. Grace hung up and got dressed. Deliberately. Worn jeans, scuffed leather boots, a plain gray cardigan. No rings, no earrings, no makeup. Hair in a simple puff. The only jewelry, her mother's thin gold chain. She looked in the mirror. She looked like any woman on any Saturday running errands in the city. Good. One last thing. She pulled a small silver brooch from her dresser, pinned it to the cardigan, just above her heart. That brooch held a 4K body camera, wide-angle lens, 64 gigabytes, always recording. She used it for mystery shopper audits across all 12 companies her firm owned. No one ever noticed it. No one ever looked that closely at a black woman's cardigan. She took the A train from Harlem to 59th Street, stood the whole way, holding the overhead rail, watching the city blur past the scratched glass. At 3:15 p.m., she stepped onto Fifth Avenue. Ashford and Vale's flagship rose like a cathedral of money. Vaulted glass ceilings, gold leaf trim, white marble columns. A pianist inside playing Debussy so softly you could hear heels clicking on the floor. Everything about that entrance whispered one thing: you do not belong here. Grace walked in anyway. The doorman hesitated just half a second before pulling the door open. A white couple near the perfume counter glanced up, then glanced at each other. A saleswoman suddenly became very busy rearranging a display she had already arranged twice. Grace didn't flinch. She walked straight to women's accessories. She was looking for one thing: a turquoise silk scarf, the same one her mother bought her 20 years ago. She wanted to buy one for her niece's college graduation next month. She found the display. Standing beside it was a young black woman with a name tag, Emily Brooks, 24. Nervous smile, but genuine. "Can I help you find something, ma'am?" "The turquoise silk, the maison weave." Emily's eyes lit up. "We do carry it. My favorite piece on this floor, honestly." For 30 seconds, the world was warm. Two black women talking about silk and color and craft in a store built to make them feel unwelcome. Then the warmth ended. Across the floor, up on the mezzanine, a man in a charcoal blazer set down his clipboard. Walter Hastings, 48, white, floor manager for 22 years, watching from the moment Grace walked in. He narrowed his eyes, straightened his tie, and started walking. Walter Hastings moved across that marble floor like he owned it. 22 years on this floor had taught him one thing: he decided who belonged and who didn't. And the woman standing at the scarf display? She didn't. He reached them in 8 steps, didn't look at Grace, looked at Emily. "Emily, step away. Go restock the back display." Emily blinked. "Sir, I'm helping a Did I stutter? Back display. Now." Emily's mouth opened, then closed. She glanced at Grace, an apology written across her whole face, and stepped back. But she didn't go far. She moved to the next counter, close enough to see, close enough to hear. Walter turned to Grace. He didn't greet her, didn't smile, didn't offer help. He looked her up and down, jeans, boots, cardigan, like he was inspecting something the janitor missed. "Ma'am, the exit is behind you." Grace kept her voice even, pleasant, the kind of calm that takes years of practice. "I'm actually shopping. I'd like to see the turquoise silk scarf, the maison weave." Walter tilted his head, like she'd just spoken a foreign language. "The maison weave." He repeated it slowly, mocking. "That scarf is $1,200, ma'am. 1,200. He let the number hang in the air, let it do the work for him. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at the outlet in New Jersey." Grace didn't blink. "I'll take 2, actually. Can I see them?" Something shifted behind Walter's eyes. She wasn't leaving. She wasn't crying. She wasn't doing any of the things he expected. And that made him angry. He raised his voice, not shouting, not yet, but loud enough for the nearest customers to hear. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We have a strict policy about loitering." "I'm not loitering, sir. I'm trying to make a purchase. And I'm telling you, this isn't the place for you." Heads turned. A woman in a white blazer looked over from handbags. A man near the watches stopped pretending to browse. The piano kept playing, but softer now, like even the pianist was listening. Walter stepped closer, close enough that Grace could smell his cologne, sharp, expensive, suffocating. "Open your bag." Grace looked at him. "Excuse me?" "Your bag. Open it. Store policy. We've had issues lately." "Issues with what, exactly?" He smiled. The kind of smile that isn't a smile at all. "With your type, ma'am, in this department. So open the bag, or I call security, and they open it for you." Your type. He said it like he was spitting out something rotten, not even trying to hide it anymore. Every person within 15 feet heard it. Grace held his stare. 3 full seconds. Then she said, quietly, "I don't believe that's store policy, sir, and I'd like to speak with your general manager." Walter laughed. Short, sharp, ugly. "Lady, I am the manager. I run this floor. I run this building. And when I tell you to open your bag, you open your bag." "And if I'd like to contact corporate?" He leaned in so close she could see the vein pulsing in his temple. "Corporate doesn't take calls from people like you, sweetheart." That word, sweetheart, dripped with so much contempt it could stain glass. He didn't wait for her answer. He reached for the radio clipped to his belt. "Security to women's accessories, now!" 30 seconds later, Thomas Bennett came through the staff door. 61 years old, white, built like a retired linebacker. He'd worked security at Ashford and Vale for 9 years, seen every kind of trouble. And the moment he walked up, he could tell the trouble wasn't the woman. It was Walter. "What's the situation, Mr. Hastings?" Walter pointed at Grace like she was evidence. "This woman is refusing to comply with a bag check. I need her removed from the premises." Thomas looked at Grace, looked at her bag, a simple leather tote hanging at her side, looked back at Walter. "Sir, has she taken any merchandise?" "That's not the point." "Has she threatened anyone?" "I said that's not the point, Thomas." Thomas paused, chose his words carefully. "Mr. Hastings, I don't see a reason to remove this customer. She hasn't touched any merchandise. She hasn't caused a disturbance. With respect, sir, the only disturbance I'm seeing right now is this conversation." Walter's face went red. Not embarrassed red, furious red. "Are you refusing a direct order?" "I'm telling you, I don't have grounds to put my hands on this woman, sir." "Then I'll do it myself." Thomas stepped forward. "Mr. Hastings, I wouldn't recommend—" But Walter was already past him. He grabbed Grace's tote bag off her shoulder. One hard yank. The leather strap burned across her skin. She didn't make a sound. He slammed the bag upside down onto the glass display counter. Everything spilled out. A worn leather wallet, a paperback copy of Beloved, a set of house keys, a tube of lip balm, a small leather-bound notebook, and one Pinnacle Holdings business card, landing face down on the glass. No stolen merchandise, no fake credit cards, no scam, nothing. Just the ordinary belongings of an ordinary woman on an ordinary Saturday. Walter stared at the pile. His jaw tightened. He had expected to find something, anything, something that would prove him right, something that would justify the scene he just made in front of 20 customers. There was nothing. But admitting he was wrong, in front of all these people, in front of Thomas, in front of Emily, that was something Walter Hastings could not do. 22 years of being right on this floor. 22 years of never being questioned. He couldn't stop now. So he did what men like him always do. He doubled down. He picked up the worn wallet between two fingers, held it up like it was dirty. This is what you were going to pay with? He tossed it back onto the pile. $1,200 scarf, and she walks in with a wallet from Goodwill. A woman near the elevator gasped. A man shook his head and looked away. The pianist had stopped playing entirely now. The only sound was the hum of the air conditioning and Walter's breathing. Grace began to repack her bag, slowly, one item at a time. Wallet, book, keys, lip balm, notebook, the business card, Pinnacle Holdings, face down. She slid back into the side pocket without turning it over. Her hands were steady. Her face was still. But something behind her eyes had changed. Not fear, not sadness, something harder, something quieter. Resolve. She placed the bag back on her shoulder, straightened her cardigan, and looked Walter Hastings directly in the eye. "Are you finished, sir?" Walter took one step closer, towering over her. "I'm finished when I say I'm finished." Behind the next counter, Emily Brooks was shaking. But her phone was steady. She had been recording for the last 4 minutes. Every word, every grab, every sneer. And on Grace's cardigan, right above her heart, the tiny silver brooch caught the overhead light. Still recording, still watching, capturing every single frame. Walter grabbed Grace's upper arm. Not a nudge, not a guide, a grip. His fingers dug into her bicep hard enough to leave marks that would still be purple the next morning. He yanked her away from the counter and started marching her toward the front doors. "Walk!" Grace didn't resist, but she didn't move faster than her own pace either. She kept her steps even, measured, like she was the one deciding the direction. "Sir, take your hand off my arm." He squeezed tighter. She could feel his fingernails through the cardigan. "You don't tell me what to do in my store." "This is assault, sir." "This is removal, and you're lucky I don't call the police." He pulled her past the perfume counter, past the handbag wall, past a row of customers who suddenly found the floor very interesting. No one moved. No one spoke. A woman in pearls turned her shopping bag so the logo faced away, like she didn't want to be associated with anything happening in this store right now. The pianist had stopped completely. His hands hovered above the keys. The silence was worse than any music. Phones came up. 3 of them, maybe 4, held low, half hidden behind purses and coat sleeves. People were recording, but nobody wanted Walter to see them doing it. That's what fear looks like in a luxury store. You film the crime, but you hide the camera. Emily Brooks didn't hide hers. She followed from 2 counters back, phone at chest height, tears running down her face, still recording. Thomas Bennett stood near the entrance, jaw clenched, fists at his sides. He had already refused one order. He knew what happened to security guards who refused too. Walter stopped in the middle of the floor, right under the chandelier, the biggest, brightest, most public spot in the entire store. He wanted an audience. He wanted people to see what happened when the wrong kind of woman walked into his building. He spun Grace around to face him, his hand still locked on her arm. "You know what I think?" Grace said nothing. "I think you came in here to run a scam, return fraud, fake receipt, maybe boost a few scarves in that ugly little bag of yours. I've seen it 100 times. "I came here to buy a scarf, sir." "Right, a $1,200 scarf on a Saturday in those jeans." He looked her up and down with theatrical disgust. "Lady, your whole outfit doesn't cost $1,200. A few feet away, a white man in a cashmere overcoat pulled his wife closer and whispered something. They didn't leave. They watched, like it was entertainment. But not everyone stayed quiet. An older white woman, silver hair, Atlanta accent, a grandmother's face, stepped forward from near the elevator. "Sir, that is enough. Let that woman go." Walter didn't even turn his head. "Ma'am, this doesn't concern you. It concerns every person in this store. You are putting your hands on a woman who hasn't done a thing." Walter's grip tightened on Grace's arm. He spoke without looking at the grandmother. "One more word, and I'll have you removed too." The grandmother went quiet. Not because she agreed, because she was afraid. And that fear, watching a 70-year-old woman go silent because a floor manager threatened her, was the moment the room understood exactly what kind of man Walter Hastings was. He turned back to Grace, leaned in, so close she could feel his breath on her forehead. Hot, stale coffee and peppermint gum. His voice dropped to a hiss, low enough that only she could hear. "And the brooch. I know what you are. I've been doing this 22 years. I can spot your kind from across the floor. The way you walk, the way you touch things you can't afford, the way you pretend like you belong." He squeezed her arm one more time. Then he smiled, a slow, wet, ugly smile. "You don't belong, sweetheart. You never did, and you never will." Grace looked up at him, calm, steady. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It came out soft and even, like a woman reading a bedtime story. "Sir, I'm going to ask you one more time. Please take your hand off me." Walter let out a sound, half laugh, half bark. "Or what?" Walter released her arm. Grace didn't rub it, didn't touch the red marks forming under her sleeve. She just stood there, still, waiting. And that stillness, that absolute, unbreakable calm, is what finally broke him. Because Walter Hastings had spent 22 years on this floor watching people shrink, watching them stammer, watching them apologize for existing. Every black customer, every brown face, every person who walked in wearing the wrong shoes or carrying the wrong bag, they always folded. They always left. This woman wasn't folding. This woman wasn't leaving. And he had no script for that. His right hand came up. Thomas saw it first. Started moving. Too far away. Too late. Emily gasped behind her phone. The grandmother covered her mouth. Crack! His open palm landed across Grace's left cheek. The sound bounced off the marble floor, off the chandelier, off every polished surface in that room. A child near the shoe department started crying. A man dropped his shopping bag. The air itself seemed to flinch. Grace's head turned with the blow. Her body stayed planted. Her feet didn't move an inch. Walter stood over her, chest heaving, face twisted into something between rage and disgust. He pointed at the front door with the same hand that just struck her. "Go away! Your kind does not belong in my store!" The words echoed. Every phone in the room was up now. No one was hiding anymore. Grace held the position, face turned, eyes down, for exactly 2 seconds. Then, slowly, like a clock hand moving, she turned her face back toward him. No tears, no trembling, no fear. She looked at Walter Hastings the way a judge looks at a defendant who just confessed on the stand. And she smiled. Not a warm smile, not a cold smile. The kind of smile that says, "I have everything I need now." Thomas was rushing forward. Grace raised one hand, not toward Walter, but toward Thomas. "Don't. Let him finish his career in his own words." Walter, still breathing hard, still blind. "Oh, I'm finished with you. Get out before I call the real police." Grace looked at him one last time. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket. Walter flinched. His whole body jerked backward. For 1 second, real fear crossed his face. The kind of fear that lives in the gut of every bully when the script finally flips. She didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out her phone. Grace dialed one number, pressed speaker, held the phone up so Walter and every person in that silent store could hear. It rang once. "Ms. Underwood, is everything all right?" The voice was sharp, professional, the kind of voice that moves money. Grace's eyes never left Walter's face. "Henry, I'm at the 5th Avenue flagship. I need you to move the Monday announcement to right now. Pull the last 3 years of HR complaints for a Walter Hastings, all of them, and get Margaret on site within the hour. Press release going live in 6 minutes. I'm texting the board now. Grace, are you safe?" She tilted her head, looked at Walter the way a cat looks at something small. "I'm perfectly safe, Henry. Mr. Hastings, on the other hand, is having the last bad day of his professional life." She hung up. Walter's face did something no one in that store had ever seen before. The color left it. Not slowly, all at once, like someone pulled a plug behind his eyes. His lips moved. No sound came out. Then, a whisper. Who are you?" Grace reached into her tote bag. The same bag he had ripped off her shoulder. The same bag he had dumped across the counter. The same bag he had mocked in front of 20 strangers. She pulled out the Pinnacle Holdings business card. The one that had landed face down on the glass 10 minutes ago. The one nobody bothered to read. She placed it face up on the counter. Slowly. Deliberately. Like she was laying down a winning hand. Grace Underwood, Chairwoman and Chief Executive Officer, Pinnacle Holdings Group. Walter stared at the card. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. See, here's what Walter didn't know. What nobody in that store knew except Grace and her team. Pinnacle Holdings had completed a hostile takeover of Ashford and Vale's parent company 11 days ago. Every share, every asset, every store. The deal closed at $1.5 billion. The public announcement was supposed to be Monday morning, but Grace just moved it to right now. Which meant the woman Walter Hastings had just slapped, the woman he dragged across the floor, the woman whose bag he dumped, the woman he called your kind, owned 54% of the company that had been signing his paychecks for 22 years. She owned the floor he was standing on. She owned the chandelier above his head. She owned the counter he had slammed her bag onto. She owned the front door he tried to throw her out of. She owned him. Emily Brooks let out a sound from behind the scarf display, half laugh, half sob. Her phone was still recording. Thomas Bennett, the security guard who had refused to touch Grace, stood by the door and said 2 words under his breath. Lord, have mercy. Walter's knees buckled. Not a metaphor. His actual knees bent. He grabbed the edge of the counter to stop himself from going down. Ma'am, there's been a terrible... The policy. I was just doing my... Grace held up one finger. One. He stopped talking. She touched the silver brooch on her cardigan, the one pinned just above her heart, the one no one had looked at twice. Mr. Hastings, everything you have said and done in the last 14 minutes has been recorded in 4K from a body camera on my person. Walter's eyes dropped to the brooch. His face crumpled. Everything. The words, the grab, the bag, the slap. Your kind. People like you steal. Corporate doesn't take calls from people like you. She paused. Let every quoted word land like a separate hammer. I am corporate, Mr. Hastings, and I take complaints very seriously. Walter opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His hand was still gripping the counter. His knuckles had gone white. The grandmother from Atlanta, the one he had silenced, stepped forward again. This time she wasn't afraid. She was smiling. Tears on her cheeks, but smiling. The glass doors at the front of the store swung open. Catherine Whitfield, HR director, came in at nearly a run, phone pressed to her ear, face white as paper. Behind her, 2 men in dark suits from legal. Behind them, a woman with a press badge. And behind all of them, already pulling up to the curb outside, visible through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the first news van. White satellite dish on top, camera crew stepping out onto Fifth Avenue. Walter saw the van. His legs gave out completely. He sat down on the marble floor, right there, under the chandelier, in his $1,000 blazer. A 48-year-old man sitting on the ground like a child who had just been told the world was ending. Because for him, it was. Grace didn't look at him. She turned to Emily Brooks, still crying, still holding her phone, still standing exactly where she had been for the last 14 minutes. Emily, I'd still like to buy that turquoise scarf. 2 of them, actually. Would you ring me up? Emily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, nodded, walked behind the register on shaking legs. The crowd, the customers, the staff, the pianist, the grandmother from Atlanta, Thomas Bennett by the door, erupted into applause. Grace didn't acknowledge it. She just placed her credit card on the counter, picked up the turquoise silk, and held it against the light. The same scarf her mother saved a year to buy. Now, she owned the whole company that made it. Catherine Whitfield didn't waste a second. She walked straight to Walter, still sitting on the marble floor, and stood over him. In her hand, a single sheet of paper. Mr. Hastings, stand up. He didn't move. I said stand up. Thomas Bennett stepped forward and took Walter's elbow. Not rough, not gentle. Professional. He lifted Walter to his feet the way you lift something that's already broken. Catherine held the paper in front of his face. This is your termination letter, effective immediately. For cause. No severance, no reference, no appeal. Your company phone, your keys, and your badge. Now. Walter's hands were shaking. He fumbled with the radio on his belt, dropped it. It clattered on the marble. He unclipped his badge, pulled the lanyard over his head, set both on the counter next to Grace's turquoise scarf. His voice came out cracked, thin. Nothing like the man who had been barking orders 5 minutes ago. Catherine, please. I have 22 years here. My kids, my mortgage. You can't just... Mr. Hastings, you assaulted a customer on camera. You used racial slurs on camera. You forcibly searched a woman's personal belongings without cause or consent. On camera. She let that last part echo. There is no company on this planet that keeps you employed after today. You know that. Walter turned to Grace. His eyes were wet now, red-rimmed, desperate. Ma'am, Miss Underwood, please. I didn't know. If I had known who you were, I never would have. Grace cut him off. Not with anger. With something worse. Disappointment. That's the problem, Mr. Hastings. You would have treated me differently if you knew who I was, which means you treat every black woman who isn't a CEO exactly the way you treated me today. Walter's mouth opened, closed. He had no answer, because there was no answer. The glass doors opened again. 2 NYPD officers walked in. Officer Daniel Carter, tall, calm, badge catching the light, and his partner. Thomas Bennett flagged them immediately. Officers, assault on a customer. I witnessed it. There's video from multiple angles. Emily stepped forward, handed her phone to Officer Carter. He watched 12 seconds of the footage. 12 seconds was enough. He looked up at Walter. Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back. Officer, this is a misunderstanding. I was just doing my... Sir, turn around. Walter turned. The handcuffs clicked. Left wrist, right wrist. The sound was small, but in that silent store, it carried like a gunshot. Officer Carter read the charges in a flat, even voice. Misdemeanor assault in the 3rd degree. Aggravated harassment in the 2nd degree, with bias crime enhancement under New York penal law. Unlawful imprisonment. Walter's face collapsed. Bias crime. Hate crime. The words hit him like physical blows. Hate crime? It wasn't about... Sir, I'd recommend you stop talking and wait for your attorney. They walked him toward the front door, past the handbag wall, past the perfume counter, past the exact path he had dragged Grace down 15 minutes earlier. The same route, the same marble. But now he was the one being removed. The doorman, the same one who had hesitated half a second before opening the door for Grace, stood at the entrance. He pulled the door wide open, all the way, and held it there as the officers walked Walter out onto 5th Avenue. He didn't hold it for Walter. He held it for the officers. Outside, the news van camera was already rolling. A reporter was speaking into a microphone. Pedestrians on the sidewalk stopped and stared. Someone raised a phone. Then another. then 6 more. In the back of the squad car, Walter mumbled to himself. The dash cam recorded every word. I was just doing my job. She was acting suspicious. It's not what it looked like. Officer Carter glanced at his partner. His partner shook his head. Carter looked into the rearview mirror. Sir, everything you're saying right now is on the record. I strongly advise you to stop. Walter stopped talking. He stared out the window at the Ashford and Vale sign, gold letters on black marble, as the car pulled away from the curb. 22 years. Gone in 14 minutes. Back inside, Grace stood at the register. Emily handed her the turquoise scarf, wrapped in tissue paper and tucked inside a black box with gold letters. The same kind of box Odessa held in that photograph on the mantel. Grace ran her fingers across the gold lettering. Ashford and Vale. Her phone buzzed. A text from Henry Wilson. Press release is live. Every major outlet picked it up. You're trending, Grace. She slid the phone back into her pocket, picked up the box, looked around the store, at the employees standing in small clusters, at Thomas Bennett still by the door, at Emily, wiping her eyes behind the register. She spoke to all of them, quietly, but everyone heard. I'll be back Monday, and things are going to be very different around here. By sunset, the hashtag Ashford Apology was trending nationwide. The next 72 hours moved like a wildfire that no one could outrun, especially not Walter Hastings. Monday morning, Pinnacle Holdings' new compliance team, led by Grace's personal attorney Margaret Davis, walked into Ashford and Vale's corporate headquarters with 3 boxes of subpoenas and a court order to access every internal HR file from the last 5 years. What they found made the slap on Fifth Avenue look like a greeting card. Walter Hastings had 15 prior complaints in his personnel file. 15. Exposed in black ink across hundreds of pages. Black customers asked to leave without cause. A Latino couple followed through the store by security on Walter's direct order. A young black teenager accused of stealing a bracelet she had already paid for. Walter had grabbed it off her wrist at the door. 15 complaints. Every single one filed by a person of color. Every single one buried by a middle manager named Craig Ellison, who had signed off on each file with the same 4 words. No further action required. Craig Ellison was terminated by noon. But Margaret wasn't done. She pulled Walter's company phone records, text messages going back 3 years. And what she found in those messages turned a single assault case into a systemic investigation. Walter had been part of a private group chat with 4 other Ashford and Vale managers across 3 different stores. They called it the Watch List. The name sounded official, professional. It was anything but. The Watch List was where these 5 men shared physical descriptions of Black and Latino customers they considered suspicious. The descriptions never mentioned behavior, only skin color, only clothing, only hairstyle. One message from Walter, sent 8 months earlier, read, Black female, braids, puffy jacket. Watch her. They always try something. Another, from a manager in the Boston store. 2 Latino kids near watches. You know the drill. 5 managers. 3 stores. Years of coordinated racial profiling disguised as loss prevention. All 4 of the other managers were fired within the week. 2 were referred to the Department of Justice for civil rights violations. Their names, their messages, and their photographs were published by every major news outlet in the country. The dominoes didn't stop at HR. Ashford and Vale had a crown jewel contract, a $1.5 billion luxury partnership with Stellar Airlines. Scarves, leather goods, amenity kits for their VIP membership program. The deal had been the company's financial backbone for 6 years. On Wednesday, 3 days after the slap, Stellar Airlines CEO appeared on live television. Standing behind a podium with the Stellar logo behind him, he read a prepared statement. The partnership was over. Effective immediately. $1.5 billion. Gone. His exact words, paraphrased across every headline that night, the relationship was no longer consistent with Stellar's stated values and commitment to dignity for all customers. Ashford & Vale's stock dropped 18% in 5 trading days. Analysts called it the fastest brand collapse in luxury retail history. But Grace didn't let the company bleed out. That wasn't why she bought it. She called an emergency board meeting Thursday morning and laid out a 3-year transformation plan. No layoffs for frontline workers, new leadership, new training, new culture. The stock stabilized by the following Monday. She wasn't there to destroy Ashford & Vale. She was there to rebuild it into something her mother would have been proud to walk into. 3 weeks later, Margaret Davis filed the civil lawsuit. The complaint named Walter Hastings individually for assault, battery, false imprisonment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It named the old Ashford & Vale corporate entity for the pattern of racial profiling and the systematic burial of complaints. Grace announced publicly, on camera, standing on the steps of the Manhattan courthouse, that every dollar from the civil award would go to a new foundation, the Odessa Underwood Retail Dignity Fund, named after her mother, dedicated to providing free legal representation to any shopper in America who experienced racial profiling in a retail environment. My mother saved for a year to buy me one scarf from a store that would have thrown her out, Grace said into the microphones. No one should ever have to earn the right to be treated like a human being while spending their own money. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. They awarded Grace $2.8 million in compensatory and punitive damages. From Walter personally. Grace wrote the check to the Odessa Underwood Fund on live television that evening. Walter couldn't pay. His house went into foreclosure within 60 days. His wife filed for separation the same week. The 22 years of authority, of power, of deciding who belonged, all of it cashed out to nothing. But the civil case was only half the weight falling on Walter's head. The criminal trial began 3 months later. Judge Eleanor Hayes presiding. Courtroom packed. Every seat taken. Press in the back row. Cameras outside. Walter pleaded not guilty on day 1. His attorney argued emotional distress and workplace pressure. The defense lasted 9 hours. Then the prosecution played the brooch footage, 4K, color, audio. 14 minutes of uninterrupted evidence. Every word Walter said, every grab, every sneer, the slap, in slow motion from 6 feet away, clear as daylight. And his voice, sharp as broken glass. Go away. Your kind does not belong in my store. The courtroom was silent. Walter's own attorney closed his folder. On day 2, Emily Brooks took the witness stand, 24 years old, hands folded in her lap, voice shaking at first, then steady, then strong. She described what she saw, what she heard, what she felt standing behind that counter, watching a man slap a woman for the crime of being black in a store that sold silk. By the time Emily finished, 3 jurors were crying. Walter changed his plea to guilty that afternoon. Judge Eleanor Hayes delivered the sentence the following Tuesday. 18 months incarceration, 3 years probation, mandatory bias intervention programming, a lifetime ban from any retail management position in the state of New York, and 500 hours of community service at a nonprofit chosen by the victim. Grace chose a community center in Harlem that served survivors of racial violence. 3 blocks from her mother's brownstone. Judge Hayes looked down at Walter from the bench. The courtroom was dead silent. She spoke slowly, every word measured. Mr. Hastings, the hand you raised in that store and the words you spoke are the same hand and the same words that have been used against Black Americans in stores, on streets, in doorways for 400 years. Today, this courtroom answers with the only language such conduct understands. She paused. Accountability. Walter was escorted from the courtroom in handcuffs. He didn't look up. He didn't speak. The cameras outside caught every step. That evening, Grace gave one interview. Not to a national network, not to a cable news anchor. She gave it to a young Black woman journalist at a small community newspaper in Detroit, the same paper her mother used to read every Sunday morning at the kitchen table. The journalist asked Grace what justice meant to her. Grace thought for a long moment. My mother saved for a year to buy me one scarf from a store that would have thrown her out in 1984. On Monday, I'm going to walk into that store's boardroom and hang her photograph on the wall. That's the only revenge I'm interested in. 6 months later, 5th Avenue, same store, same marble, same piano. But something was different. You could feel it the moment you walked through the door. Above the main staircase, where a corporate logo used to hang, there was now a bronze plaque. Simple, elegant. 5 words etched into the metal. The Odessa Underwood Atrium. Beneath the plaque, a black and white photograph. A woman in her 40s, black, smiling so wide it reached her eyes. In her hands, a turquoise gift box with gold letters. Odessa. The woman who worked 3 jobs. The woman who saved for a year. The woman who raised a daughter in public housing and never once told her there were doors she couldn't open. Below the photograph, a single engraved line. Every customer who crosses this threshold crosses it as family. G.U. The store had changed in ways you couldn't hang on a wall, too. Mandatory bystander training for all 12,000 employees across every location. A customer bill of rights posted at every entrance, printed in 4 languages. An independent ombuds office reporting directly to the board. And a new promotion pipeline for frontline associates that didn't require a last name anyone recognized or a face that matched the old guard. Emily Brooks was the face of that pipeline, 24 years old, former junior sales associate, now floor manager of the 5th Avenue flagship, the youngest in the company's history. She wore a navy blazer with a small gold pin on the lapel. Her name tag didn't say sales associate anymore. It said manager. Emily Brooks. Thomas Bennett got promoted too. Director of Ethics and Floor Conduct Training, chain-wide. He spent his weeks traveling between stores, teaching security guards one simple principle. Protect the customer, not the ego of the person signing your schedule. On this particular Saturday afternoon, 6 months to the day after the slap, a young black girl walked through the front doors of Ashford and Vale's flagship. She was maybe 12. Braids, pink backpack, holding her grandmother's hand. The doorman opened the door without hesitation. All the way. Smiled as they passed. The girl looked up at the vaulted ceilings, the gold leaf, the chandelier. Her eyes went wide the way only a 12-year-old's eyes can. Emily spotted them from across the floor, walked over, knelt down to the girl's level. "Welcome. Can I help you find something today?" The girl looked at her grandmother. The grandmother nodded.
"My grandma wants to show me the scarves.
She said a lady like me owns the whole store now." Emily smiled. The kind of smile that starts in the chest and doesn't stop until it reaches your ears. "She does, sweetheart. Let me show you her favorite." She took the girl's hand and walked her to the turquoise display. Up on the mezzanine, the same spot where Walter Hastings once stood with his clipboard, narrowing his eyes at every black woman who dared to walk in, Grace Underwood stood watching. She wore a simple black dress, flats, her mother's gold chain around her neck. She watched Emily kneel beside the girl, watched the girl's fingers brush across the turquoise silk, watched the grandmother press her hand to her mouth, trying not to cry. Grace touched the gold chain at her throat. She didn't cry either. She didn't need to. Everything she had ever wanted to say to her mother was happening on that floor below her, in real time, in living color. The piano started playing again, something soft, something warm. The notes drifted up through the atrium and settled around the bronze plaque like a quiet hymn. Odessa's photograph smiled down at all of it. "So here's what I need from you. If this story made you feel something, anger, hope, maybe a little bit of fire, do 3 things for me. 1, hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel tell more stories like this one. 2, subscribe. I post a new one every week. The next one might be about somebody in your city. 3, and this is the important one, share this with one person. Just one. Someone who needs the reminder that the quietest person in the room is almost always the one holding the real power. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever watched a Walter try it with the wrong person and live to tell the tale? I'm reading every single reply. Bro, like, judging someone by their skin color? Nah, that's wild. She's black so she can't afford it? Are you dead ass right now? She bought the whole company. Don't ever look down on someone for how they look. Treat people like people. It's not that hard for